Most couples run the stay-at-home spouse math once, decide it makes sense, and never look at it again. That's the problem, because the number on the surface isn't the number that actually matters. If you're sitting there thinking, we already figured this out, or my wife staying at home was the right call for our family, I'm not here to argue with that. But I bet you never ran the full cost, not the real one. The paycheck you gave up is the smallest part of the equation. The compounding retirement contributions that never started, the Social Security credits that stopped accruing, the career reentry gap that widens every year she's out, those costs are invisible until they aren't. And by the time they show up, they're not small. Here's what most people don't know about me. During my first marriage, I was the sole financial provider for our household. Every bill, every mortgage payment, every unexpected expense landed on one income, mine. Then the marriage ended and I spent almost 10 years as a single dad while on commission income. Still the only financial engine running for my daughter and myself. No backup, no second paycheck, no floor underneath me if a slow month hit. I've lived both versions of this. The two-parent household where one person carries all the financial weight, and the single-parent household where that same dynamic just becomes a little more honest about what it actually is. What I watched happen in commission income households during my years as a financial advisor looked exactly like what I was navigating in my own life. The structural risks are real. They compound quietly, and most families never see them until it's too late to course correct cheaply. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what the hidden cost of a stay-at-home spouse actually looks like across 5 financial categories most couples never discuss before they make the call. So let's get into the math nobody puts in front of you before you make this decision. Here's the first place couples go wrong. They calculate the lost salary, subtract childcare costs, and decide the math works. That's not the math. That's the cover charge. The real cost starts the moment you walk through the door. Take a spouse earning $45,000 a year before stepping back. That's the number couples put on the whiteboard. But a salary isn't just a paycheck. It's the foundation every other financial asset in her name gets built on. And when it stops, the foundation stops with it. You're not losing $45,000 once. You're losing it this year and the year after and the year after that, along with the raises and promotions and retirement contributions that would have grown alongside with it. The mistake most guys make here is treating the lost income as a one-time subtraction. Over 10 years, that's $450,000 in gross earnings that never entered the household. Over 15 years, depending on the trajectory she would have been on, you're looking at a number that makes the original whiteboard math look naive. I can tell you from experience that being the only income in a household changes how every slow month feels. When I was the sole provider, whether I was married or raising my daughter on my own, there was no cushion underneath me. When that floor disappears, your feast or famine income cycle stops being a personal problem and becomes everyone's problem. Every person under your roof absorbs the variance you were already managing alone. The fix isn't necessarily for her to go back to work. The fix is to price this honestly before you decide, not just the childcare math, the full math, because the entry fee is the smallest line on the invoice. This is the one that doesn't show up for 20 years and then shows up all at once. When your spouse stops working, she stops contributing to a retirement account in her own name. If she had a 401k through her employer, those contributions stop. The employer match stops. The compounding on both stops. And because retirement accounts grow over decades, not years, the gap that opens in year 1 is not a small gap by year 20. It's a canyon. Compounding doesn't care about your intentions. It doesn't wait for her to go back to work. Every year the contributions don't happen is a year the base doesn't grow, which means every subsequent year compounds on a smaller number. The math is unforgiving in a way that a salary gap isn't. A salary gap is linear. A retirement contribution gap is exponential. Most couples assume they'll catch up later. We'll just put more in when the kids are in school. But the dollars contributed in years 1 through 10 are worth dramatically more at retirement than the dollars contributed in years 20 through 30. You can't buy back early contributions. The window closes and it doesn't reopen. There's a partial solution worth knowing about. A spousal IRA allows a working spouse to contribute to a retirement account in the non-working spouse's name as long as the household has earned income. That means even if she's not working, you can fund a retirement account for her. Annual contribution limits apply, but most couples I've talked to have never heard of a spousal IRA. They don't know the option even exists, so the gap just sits there, widening, while everyone assumes they'll figure it out later. If you're the sole earner on commission income, this matters even more. Your income already has gaps built into it. A slow season, a bad market, an injury that keeps you off the road for 6 weeks. You can't afford for her retirement to have gaps running silently alongside your own. This next one is almost never part of the conversation, and it should be. Social Security benefits are calculated based on your highest 35 years of earnings. Every year your spouse isn't working is a year that gets recorded as 0 in that calculation. Depending on how long she's out of the workforce, she could have 5, 10, or 15 zeros sitting in her Social Security record. Those zeros pull down the average and reduce the benefit she'll receive at retirement. And unlike a retirement account you can fund separately, you can't buy Social Security credits. You earn them by working. That's the only way. The difference between a full 35-year work record and one with 10 to 15 zeros is meaningful over retirement that could last 20 to 30 years. The mistake couples make is assuming Social Security is a household benefit. It's not. It's an individual benefit calculated on an individual's work record. Yes, there are spousal benefit rules that allow a non-working spouse to claim up to 50% of the working spouse's benefit, but that's a ceiling, not a guarantee. And if the working spouse's benefit is built on commission income that had variable years, that ceiling may be lower than you think. Most couples aren't doing the math. They're running on the assumption that it'll work itself out. It won't work itself out. It'll do exactly what the math says it will. If this breakdown is landing for you, that's exactly what this channel is built to do. Subscribe so you don't miss the next video on how commission income households can structure their finances before a major life decision like this one. Now, let's get into the 2 categories that most couples really don't see coming. This one surprises people the most because it doesn't feel like a cost while it's happening. It feels like a pause, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Every year your spouse is out of the workforce, a few things happen at the same time. Her skills in her field either stagnate or drift. Her professional network goes quiet. Her resume develops a gap that hiring managers will ask about, and the industry she left keeps moving without her. The longer she's out, the wider the distance between where she left and where the market is when she tries to return. The re-entry salary is almost never the salary she left at. It's usually lower, and she's often entering at a level below where she would have been if she'd stayed. So the cost isn't just the years of lost income. It's also the career trajectory she would have been on, the promotions that didn't happen, the raises that didn't compound, the seniority she would have built. None of that is recoverable on a standard timeline. The mistake couples make is planning for re-entry as if the job she left will be waiting for her. It won't. The market moves, her field moves, and depending on how long she's been out, the credentials she had may need to be refreshed or replaced entirely. That costs time and money on top of the income gap itself. For any sales professional carrying a household alone, the question of how quickly a non-working spouse could re-enter the workforce if the situation changed isn't theoretical. It's a risk assessment that deserves a real answer before you need it. This is the one nobody wants to talk about, so I'm going to say it plainly. When one spouse carries all the earned income and the other has been out of the workforce for years, the household's financial stability depends entirely on one person's continued ability to earn. That person is you. If you get sick, injured, disabled, or if the marriage itself hits serious turbulence, the financial consequences for your spouse are not symmetrical. You've been earning. You have a work history, a Social Security record, retirement contributions, and marketable skills. She's been managing the household. That work is real and it matters, but it doesn't show up on a bank statement like a W-2. Now, I'm not going to pretend my life hasn't been messy. I've been on both sides of the transition from a 2-parent household to single-parent household. When a marriage ends and one person was the sole provider and the other was out of the workforce, the financial landing is not even. The earning spouse absorbs the disruption differently than the spouse who gave up her financial identity for the household. That's not a criticism of the arrangement. It's just what the math produces, and it's worth naming before you're inside it. The same logic applies to disability and death. If you're the sole earner and you become unable to work, does the household have enough in reserves, insurance, and assets to sustain itself? Too many households don't have a clean answer to that question. And when one spouse has no independent income, no current professional network, and a significant gap on her resume, the recovery window is longer and harder than it would be if she'd maintained some form of income or career progression. This isn't an argument against the stay-at-home arrangement. Some families make it work beautifully and deliberately, but those families usually have 3 things in place: a robust emergency reserve, life and disability insurance on the earning spouse, and a deliberate plan to keep the non-working spouse's financial identity alive through retirement contributions, spousal IRA funding, and a clear re-entry plan if the situation ever changes. Most couples don't have all three. They have the intention, but not the structure. And on commission income, where the income is already variable and the margin for error is already thin, the absence of that structure isn't just a financial risk. It's a pressure that every slow month makes heavier. The decisions you make on one income's worth of information are the ones you spend the longest living with. Make sure you run the full math first. Hey Root Money Pros, if this video made you think differently about the full cost of this decision, hit like and subscribe. This channel exists to put the math in front of you before the situation puts it in front of you. If you want to start getting your commission income structured so it can actually support a household through the slow months and the unexpected ones, grab the free Feast or Famine Survival Guide. The link's in the description and it walks you through the forecasting foundation so you know exactly what your income is actually doing before you try to manage it. In the meantime, keep stacking, keep building, and I'll see you in the next one.